This show is distributed by SoundCloud. Welcome.
Welcome to episode 200 of Texting, not hosted by myself, Justin Vincent, and Jason Roberts. To celebrate 200 episodes of Texting, we wanted to acknowledge the women who helped us get here. They say behind every techie is a good woman. Here are three of the best: Sherry Walling, Sandy Roberts, and Georgie Wisen-Vincent. In this show, our better halves talk about what it's like to be married to a tech entrepreneur.
Hello.
Hi, Sandy.
Hey. Hi. How's it going?
Wait, who are you asking?
Anyone.
We have to get used to this kind of recording thing.
I know. Wow, the sound is really good on these things. It feels like it's like Dolby Digital or something like that.
It's the movie theater version.
Yes. Boy, oh boy. I don't know. Are we ready to get started? I don't know how this. Who wants to do the introduction? Georgie, doesn't Justin usually introduce the show?
Yeah, what he'll do is we can start any way we want, and then he'll go back and edit it, and he's going to do the introduction that he normally does, which is like, welcome to episode 200 of Tech Zing, hosted by myself, Justin Vincent, and Jason Roberts. See, I have that memorized. You know how many of these podcasts I've listened to? And then he'll say, today we're not on the show. Today is about the wives dishing about their tech husbands or partners.
Okay.
So,
Well, why don't you start it off then, Georgie? Sounds like you got it down.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have it down. I mean, I would say I've thought a lot about what it means to be married to a tech guy.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I guess I have questions for you gals about it, and also about like being married to an entrepreneur who happens to be involved in tech and the internet. Because I've always kind of felt like I was the only one out there. I don't know why I felt like that, but it is a kind of unique, I think, relationship to be in. And, you know, without being too serious about it, I think there's a lot of like, maybe people listening to the show also have partners who have gone through similar things. And so I'm curious to know how you two ladies deal with these types of situations. So,
Right. Well, should we get started?
yeah, let's do it. Now I'm supposed to say something?
Somebody hit the record button and then start talking.
Well, we're already recording.
Oh
so
my gosh.
Justin has pushed record and walked out like he said he was going to. So,
Oh, really?
I mean, basically, I think he'll probably just splice in the intro that I just did, and then we can kind of take it from here. But Sandy, I liked your idea about just introducing ourselves and saying a little bit about why we're talking today.
I'm Sandy Roberts, and I'm Jason's wife, and we've been married for almost 13 years. Our anniversary is coming up, actually, and
Congratulations.
we have 3 kids. Colby, I'm sure everyone is very familiar with. He's almost 8. Izzy is 6, and Arilee is 4.5. And I'm a stay-at-home mom. And I used to be a wedding planner, actually, before we had kids. And how I spend my time now is I'm currently president of the Junior League of Pasadena, which is a volunteering organization for women. And that's pretty much how I spend my time.
How did you meet Jason?
Oh, we met in college, actually. We're both on the track team. He was always injured. I never, ever saw him compete. I saw him in the training room a lot, getting ice and wraps and stuff like that. But isn't that funny? I've actually never seen him compete. But that's how we met. I was a freshman and he was a senior. It was at University of Chicago.
Huh. So you were just kind of walking by the training room while you were about to compete, and then you just met him that way?
How we actually met was I was a prospy. It was before I started and when I was considering going to University of Chicago. And so I stayed with one of the girls on the track team and stayed in her dorm room, who happened to be friends with Jason. And he just stopped by, and we figured this out later neither of us made the connection at the time, but that was when I first met him. But when I first actually saw him it was after practice one time, and he was lounging upstairs in the field house, and I had to talk to Coach about something. And so I see him lounging there, and I think he followed me home. We lived in I know. We lived in the same dorm, and I think that he spotted me at the bus stop to get back to the dorm. It was off campus, and took the seat across the aisle from me, and the rest is history.
Aw, that's a cute story, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's about to get a little bit creepy because I met Rob on the track team at UC Davis. I was a freshman. He was a senior.
Oh my gosh.
He was always injured. I never saw him run.
No. Have you guys met?
We have, actually.
Okay. And you didn't know that about each other. That is so incredible.
That's really funny.
Wow. And did you know that were they into like doing the type of work that they're doing now when you guys met them, or is that something that developed later?
There was no internet back then.
Oh.
I mean,
you're dating yourself, Sandy.
I know. No, when we were in college, I think it wasn't until later in our college careers that, you get like the intercollegiate email account, and it was on some sort of a Linux server.
Yeah.
It was very, very basic, but yeah, there was, it was a long time ago, but so there was no tech, but I remember him studying C, the language C, because he was working in trading after he graduated. And so he was programming using C. Remember seeing those books around.
All right, great. Sherry, do you want to say a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So I am married to Rob Walling, who blogs at Software by Rob and Startups for the Rest of Us. And we have been married for 12 years. We have 2 little boys. Geffen is 6 and Fisher is 2. When I am not being wife to the techie and mother to the boys, I'm a clinical psychologist. So I've been a college professor for the last 3 years, and I run a clinic where I train upcoming psychologists. So I'm busy in my own work as well as the family work.
Sherry, do you work at home?
Sometimes I work at home like maybe one day a week. Other than that, I'm usually at the clinic or the office.
Okay, well, Sherry, I'm just gonna say a little bit about myself because I didn't meet my husband on the track team, but I did go to UC Davis for my bachelor's degree. Yes, I did study psychology there. And I'm a psychotherapist as well, but I'm a marriage and family therapist. By the way, this is Georgie Wisen. I'm married to Justin Vincent. I'm currently practicing as a therapist in LA, although we've moved around a lot over the last year, as Justin has talked about on Texting. We finally settled back down in Pasadena. We're living just a hop, skip, and a jump from Jason and Sandy now. And I'm also trying to figure out whether I'm doing private practice and gathering clients and things like that. So really just getting settled back in over here. But it sounds like all 3 of us have some similarities going on other than having the husbands that we have.
Yeah, definitely. What was the move like, Georgie?
Do you mean, which one do you mean? Because we've done so many.
Haven't you guys moved 5 times within the last couple of years?
I think it's been something like 7 times in the past 4 years. Justin and I have been married for 4 years. We were married over in London, and I was studying in London, doing a master's degree in child psychology and play therapy over there. And then we moved here and subsequently bounced around LA for a while. And then we moved to Savannah, Georgia, which we pretty quickly discovered Savannah wasn't going to be our forever home, but definitely a beautiful, beautiful place that I'd love to go back to. But the move was okay. I mean, it's stressful to move. I mean, I'm sure you ladies have moved a few times in your life and you know what goes into it. I think the hardest part for me is having a husband who is a techie, who seems to be singularly focused a lot of the time on business and all the various things he does. He doesn't just do one thing. He does 20 things, usually, within 5 minutes of each other. The hard part for me is managing everything else, because I don't have kids. So you ladies are doing, I feel, a lot more than I am in some ways. And just managing everything else that goes into a marriage, I think, and doing things like, did we call the movers? What time are the movers showing up? Like packing every single thing we own into boxes and things like that. It all kind of falls on me just naturally. Not that Justin isn't capable. It's just that he chooses not to do it, as he says. And so I end up kind of being the marriage manager, and he kind of ends up being like the business manager. So I just wondered, like, is that just unique to my relationship, or do other tech wives go through that experience too?
Yeah, Sherry, how do you guys do it?
Well, I was thinking as you were talking, Georgie, I think we are pretty evenly matched in some ways. So I'm relating to that part of Rob being pretty focused. Like, he hates to be interrupted. Like, when he is doing something, he is in it, and he just doesn't shift in and out very well. But I think because so much of our moves and our last, the last like 7 years of our marriage have been a little bit sort of based around me going to graduate school, getting my doctorate, like doing all this stuff that was really sort of demanding on me vocationally. He has really stepped up and kind of shared a lot of those things. So like when we've done our cross country moves, he will totally organize the movers, but I will do all the searching for the house. So it's really like a team effort. But some of that, I think, has just had to be that way because of the demands of managing what I've been doing as well as the kids. So
Sherry, does that kind of thing come naturally to Rob? Because I've found that like Justin is really able to do 10 different things at once, have about 20 windows up on his laptop at once, and he's very capable about multitasking when it comes to like what's going on as far as work.
Yeah.
But he's not so great at organizing, like, we've got to go, meet with, we've got to meet with someone on Thursday, like a few days from now, and like get ready for that. And what goes into getting ready for that meeting, like on Thursday. He can do all of it for work, but when it comes to like outside of that, I think he's just happy for me to kind of take over those things, because he says, "Oh, you're so good at it, G, you're so good at it." So does that ever happen with you and Rob, or maybe between Sandy and Jason? Like, I'm just curious how that gets negotiated.
Well, Jason and I divide things up pretty clearly, because I agree with you, Georgie, that Jason is just like Justin, that he is not good with household administration. I say I do about 98% of it, and I fill him in maybe once a month, once every 2 weeks. He's like, "What's going on with such and such?" And so I'll give him the details. And we've always said that, he's the CEO and I'm the COO. He's got this idea like, let's go on vacation, or let's have kids, and then I handle all the rest. I just make it happen. Yes. I'm very good with details, and I'm very good at lining things up and shooting them down. Just getting things done, and he's very much he just likes to focus on interesting things that he likes to think about, and paying bills, going to the grocery store. In fact, he's been banned from going to the grocery store because he messes up my weekly menu plan by being so impulsive. So he doesn't get to go. He just kind of expects me to have, this is so, when I say it out loud, it's so old fashioned, and I can't even believe I'm even saying it, but like that there's clean towels, and his clothes are all clean. They're not usually put away, but and so we kind of have definitely divided up the responsibilities of I manage the house and the kids, and he kind of does the whole business thing. And I don't work, so that's kind of okay with me because that's sort of my job, and I have the time to do it. And he just works, but he wouldn't be good at it even if he tried. I can't even. Sometimes he does clean up after dinner. Sometimes put the dishes in the dishwasher, but I don't like how he does it. So.
Right. So kind of naturally you gravitate toward that role anyway, and then Jason's kind of happy for you to take the reins because it comes more naturally to you than to him. Yeah,
I think so. I'm kind of a typical Midwestern girl, so it just seems natural to me. Yes, I was kind of raised that way. But if I were working, I think it would be different. And I'm trying to remember what it was like before we had kids. I can't even remember at that time, but I'm sure we shared a little bit more of the household responsibilities, but probably not too much because he works all the time.
Yeah. How much does Jason work and how much does Rob work? I'm just curious, like, what is the typical number of hours that your husbands work, would you say?
I think Jason and I would have a different answer to that question.
I think that's true for us too.
Yeah, because let's see. We usually all take the kids to school in the morning, and so we get back from that around 9:00. He typically goes out to lunch, someplace quick though. It's not like he goes out to a real restaurant. It's, some sort of glorified fast food type place. Then he works until like Baja Fresh or Chipotle or, something like that, not McDonald's.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, well, there's that.
There's standards,
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And then he works till about 5:30 or so, and then he goes to the gym. But then after dinner, he's usually reading a bunch of stuff that he's printed out and researching stuff for the podcast. I don't know if you want to call that working. It's not billable. And then, it's kind of the same thing on the weekends. So, I mean, he would probably say he works about 12 hours a day. And I would say that he works actually sitting at his desk working between 7 and 8.
Okay. And what about Rob?
It varies tremendously. And I think Sandy raises a really good point about how do we categorize work and not work? Like we'll be at the beach or like doing something that's sort of a family event, but Rob is reading a magazine or he's writing notes for a podcast or for a book or for, he's sort of always on, I think in his head,
yeah.
which is a challenge, I think, of being married to someone who has the kind of job that sort of bleeds over everywhere. It doesn't stay confined neatly between 8 and 5 or whatever. So for Rob's hours, there are weeks where he maybe works 7 hours a day, 3 days in the week, and that's just maintenance, just barely keeping it up. That's sort of like summer hours, but then when he's working on something intensively, there have been a couple of months where he will, he's pretty good about stopping between 5 and 8 to have time with the family and with the kids. But then, so he'll work from 9 to 5, take a couple hour break, and then work from 9 p.m. until 1 a.m. Every day for 5 days.
Night owl.
And
Yeah.
that's more when he has a deadline or he's building something or he's, on fire about something. But it varies tremendously depending on what's going on and what he's doing and, all those kinds of things.
And so there needs to be some kind of communication, I would imagine, about, who's going to do XYZ for the kids or who's taking care of this. It goes back to what you were saying, Sherry, about there are times when he's going to be available and times when you have to kind of book his time. Is it kind of like that?
Totally. I think when we are functioning well, we kind of Rob and I sort of sit down on a Sunday night and it's okay, let's look at the week. Who's doing what? Who's going where? Who's picking up the kids this day?
Yeah.
Who has meetings? Who's got stuff at night? And it's it's really like a sort of a dance between who's on.
See, you're pretty good because I don't give Jason that much notice. If something's coming up around lunchtime, who's going to bring Ari to school, for example? Who's taking the kids, to soccer practice? I'll give him like a half a day or at most a day's notice. Or I'll say something like, okay, I've got a lunch meeting today, so you've got to take Ari to school, or you have to take someone out to lunch or something like that. But he could not handle the whole week's worth of logistics in one meeting. He wouldn't handle it. So I just kind of spoon feed it to him bit by bit.
Yeah, I can kind of relate to that because with Justin, I may have told him 5 or 6 different times that we're going to do something the next day, and he doesn't remember any time that I told him. So he's always saying, why didn't you tell me before? And I'm always saying, well, it's because, you were busy, you were, caught up in doing something else. But Justin fully admits that he's really not great at context switching. Mm-hmm. And that's the term, I guess, that gets thrown around about, he's right in the middle of writing some code and he just can't break out of that code, or he's just trying to rework something to solve a problem. And then he's thinking about that problem for 3 days straight. And you see this glazed look over his face. Like you can tell he's not there. And I wonder if you guys can relate to that, where it's just, we're sitting and trying to eat dinner and it's the only, hour I'm going to get with him that day. And he's not there. It's like being with a zombie or something. And sometimes I feel a little bit like, hey, snap out of it. I'm not going to see you again until tomorrow. But other times I kind of go, okay, I get it. I understand. So I'm trying to be a little patient with that. But I think a lot of the time, unfortunately, Justin feels like I'm like shouting at him, like, come on, we have to go now. We have to go to that thing now. And he feels like, she didn't tell me. She didn't tell me beforehand that we had this thing to do. Yeah. But really, he's just kind of lost in what he's doing. And I think that, I don't know, it could be a really good thing that they're focusing that intensely on something. It means that they're making money and they're taking care of us, and everybody's going to be able to eat and have clothes to wear and go to private school and all those things. But at the same time, does it leave us feeling sometimes like we're a little bit left out?
I don't feel left out. Sometimes I kind of appreciate the peace and quiet.
Yeah.
I think when you've been married to guys like ours for as long as we have, you just sort of, understand, it's not like it's not like they're mad at us. It's not like you have an issue in your marriage. They're just thinking about something. They'll come up for air or food or something in a day or so. And, that's fine. It's just, sometimes I get really busy thinking about something, or, the kids have a very busy schedule or a couple of bad days. And I don't, I get it. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
I think it's been important for me to pay attention to when I am starting to feel bothered or irritated, and like just really to say that, it's that classic, it all comes back to communication in marriage. But he has been really responsive those times when I've said, you know what, I know this is really important. I love that you love what you're doing, but I'm needing like a little bit of attention.
Yeah.
And that's been okay to say. And I try not to play that card too much, but when I do play it, it's pretty well received. So I'm with you. I can handle, I can sort of support and affirm and give space for him to be in his little zone or whatever. And I sort of trust that he'll come out of it when I really need him to.
Yeah, that sounds really positive. I think I aspire to be a little bit more like you ladies, whether it's like Sandy and just fiercely independent, or a little bit like Sherry, which is like, I'm going to speak up when I feel the need, I think that's great, because I don't know if I handle it that well. And I'm going to share a little anecdote about, how hard it can be sometimes. It's not always hard, but sometimes it is. I was telling Justin one time, like, I think as women, we tend to be very relational in general. Like, we tend to think about everybody in the room and not just ourselves, or put everyone else before us if we have kids, or if we have, a partner, or if we have like friends over or extended family, we tend to make sure everybody's happy before we kind of serve ourselves, So I'm constantly thinking about other people, and I'm constantly thinking about Justin. What does Justin need? Kind of doing those things, thinking 10 steps ahead. Not that I spend my whole day serving him, because I don't. But I just tend to keep him in mind quite a lot. And so I think that all goes back to kind of managing our marriage. And so one time I was telling him, do you know how much I actually think about you during the day? And he's like, no, maybe once or twice. Really? Once or twice, that's it. And I'm like, well, that gives me an indication of how much he's thinking about me. So I said to Justin one time, did you ever stop and just think about, like, maybe I need something? What's going on with Georgie right now? Let me just check on her. Because I think he's probably just happy to let me get on with things just in general. And he was like, oh, yeah, I'm definitely going to start thinking about you, G. Let me make a note to do that.
Oh, gosh.
And I went, okay, you're going to make a note to do that. So we were out somewhere, and all of a sudden an alarm goes off on his cell phone. This is like a couple days later. I look down at his cell phone, and it says TAG, T-A-G.
Oh, so think about Georgie.
What is this? Did you just download some kind of app called TAG? What's going on? He goes, no, I've just programmed an alarm to go off every 3 hours to think about you.
How typical. Oh,
and
my gosh.
I think it's kind of typical just of Justin's geekness that
I was just going to say geek.
that he kind of needs a reminder to be relational. And it's not that Justin's not an empathic person, because he's like sometimes more of a therapist than I am when it comes to like people wanting to call up and talk about problems that they're having. I mean, Justin's definitely somebody that people seek out and want to talk things over with when it's of an emotional nature, sometimes even better than me. It's just that he's just not keeping other people in mind as much. And I didn't know, like, is that just unique to him, or what would you say about Jason and Rob in that regard?
I think that's really awesome, I have to say. I think it's really awesome.
At least he's trying.
He's figuring out a system that works, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm glad you've trained him so well, Georgie.
I didn't teach him how to do that. He just came up with that on his own.
My gosh. That's funny. I'm pretty independent, so I don't really need that kind of thing. I think that's just my own independence. And Jason works at home, so I see him. He comes through all the time. He takes breaks, and so I don't feel wanting in any sort of attention or emotional type thing.
But it sounds like you and Jason are a good match in that way. Like there's a lot of balance there already. Okay,
yes,
as I'm saying this, I'm looking at Justin's cell phone. Guess what it says? It says TAG right now. What a coincidence. And he's in the other room. He's in the other room. He can't even see it. Anyway. But also that it seems like Jason maybe seeks out the connection with you, Sandy, a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. Well, you know how social he is.
Oh, yeah.
And so because things are happening in the other room. And so he'll just come out just to be a part of society for a little while. He's got his head in his computer for a few hours, and he'll come out and, we'll just chat here and there. And then he'll go back in, and he comes and either goes out to lunch or makes himself a sandwich, or I come in and tell him what the schedule for the day is. And, so, I mean, we have quite a lot of interaction throughout the day because we're both here. What about you, Sherry?
I feel really needy compared to you, Sandy.
I think I'm probably too independent for my own good.
I think that Rob is also pretty relational and pretty nurturing, actually. Like he's got a pretty well developed feminine side that he's going to be like totally horrified that I said that. But I don't think he has anything programmed into his phone to think about. But I definitely know that he uses his technological skill to think about like gifts and those kinds of things. Like he'll like read my Pinterest page and those kinds of things.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
But yeah, no, he's always been, I mean, before he entered this field, and, you know, this is sort of what drew me to him in the first place, like a pretty, just very emotionally attuned guy, considering his, you know, chosen vocation, and that he is a techie and that he's an engineer. Like, he's pretty emotionally there in a way that I have just like really, really enjoyed. Has been really fun.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, you know, I don't want to come across and sound like I am sort of bitching at Justin all the time and things like that. I think creatively I've been able to
I wouldn't blame you if you did.
Well, you know, they can be a little hard. But no, I was just thinking, like, creatively, I think I've found ways to connect more with what Justin's doing. Like, I've tried to stay open to learning as much as I can about what he's working on, and just asking him, like, what are you up to? What are you doing? I don't understand all the languages he codes in and sort of the nitty gritty of that sort of thing. I recognize some of the names of things, but, you know, I've worked on a couple of businesses that he's done doing sort of like social media, community management stuff. And I'm very much an amateur still at this point, but I'm interested in it. I'm curious about it. You know, it's something that I don't do full time, but it's definitely a way that I can connect with him, that I know he's going to be fully present when I'm talking with him about what he's doing. So I think that's a way that we've managed to kind of meet in the middle.
Yeah.
And I was just curious, like, how much are you ladies involved in what your husbands do for a living, and how much do you know about the techie stuff?
Not very much.
Yeah. We're sort of off being with people.
So Rob wrote a book a couple years ago, and I am really very embarrassed to say I actually have not read it. My mother has read it, but I haven't. I think, like, it has been really a pleasure to just see him do his thing, and I don't feel like I'm just not that involved in it. In fact, some of the like most awkward conversations I have in my life are when people ask me what Rob does. And it's like, well, he owns some things. Like, I just bumble my way through it. Not because I don't care and don't really know, but because it's such a shifting thing, and it's really hard to sort of stay up with all of the things that he's got going on at one particular time.
Yeah.
So I actually went to, so he puts on a conference, MicroConf, and I went for the first time this year just for like 24 hours. And it was really the first time that I have really seen him in his element, like seen him speak, see him connect with his colleagues. And so that was really fun. But it was also like, whoa, we've been married a long time and operating in pretty separate vocational spheres. And I haven't really, you know, been that involved in the details of it. But I admire your willingness to learn the lingo and jump in there, Georgie. It sounds like that's awesome.
Well, I haven't really had a choice in some ways. Like, I really think Justin's kind of pulled me in. He's like, hey, you can talk to people. You know how to, like, make people feel good about things. Why don't you come on and get people talking about this product that I'm working on, or this new site that we're launching? And it's sort of like, okay, I don't know anything, but I'm sort of willing to learn, you know? So I've just, you know, I've kind of tried my best, but there are times when what he's talking about is going completely over my head, and I just kind of shake my head and go, but it's not because I don't care. It's just because I think my brain works completely differently from his in some ways. So we have to find a way to bridge that, I guess.
I've actually worked with Jason quite a bit. I actually worked for him. I was his employee way back when. I think this is even before we got married. And his boss, his boss, I guess you would say, was upset that Jason had hired his girlfriend. But it was way back when Jason and his buddy Phil were building the trading simulator back in Chicago. And I can do all kinds of stuff. You know, I'm very good with all the administrative details. I, you know, had some job experience in marketing at the time. So they hired me. It was just Phil and Jason. And then they hired me to kind of manage their office and manage their business and answer the phone, because Jason thinks it's a really mark of prestige if you have a girl answer your phone.
Like James Bond 007 always has that cute secretary.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Moneypenny. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the time, Jason and Phil had just been writing code, and they hadn't put their software out in the market yet. And when they hired me, it was right around the time when they were about to do that. And so I came in, and so they're, going out with their dog and pony show and demoing their product to potential clients, and someone actually bought it, and so they were like, okay, so what do we do next? Do we, arrange like a briefcase exchange of cash, or, what happens next? And that's kind of an interesting startup moment when you're developing, and then you make the switch into actual sales. And at the time, it was, 15 years ago. And at the time, we were all young, and they had no idea. And so I was like, okay, well, we'll create an invoicing system, and you can go install their product, and we'll send them an invoice, and we'll need to have some marketing materials. And so, I worked on putting that together, and I used Microsoft Word with, text boxes and image boxes, and made the copies on the company's color printer, and handled their travel details. Actually, another funny story was I was the one who bought Jason and his partner at the time, Phil, their very first cell phones. Yeah, it's true. I went to the local cell phone place, and I got them both cell phones, and the company paid for it, and I showed them how to work it. I also got them their first real, I don't know what Phil would say about this, but Jason for sure, his first suit, so that they could go out and look presentable when they made these sales calls. They ditched the suits pretty quickly, but it was just all about turning their product into an actual business. And so we worked on that for a while, and Jason took it pretty seriously. It was, Phil and I would just kind of snicker between ourselves. Jason, he never wanted all three of us to go out to lunch together, for example, because he would say, well, what if someone calls? There has to be someone there to answer the phone. Well, nobody ever called. I can tell you, nobody called. And so we just had a field day, just teasing him about, well, the second we step out the door, the floodgates are going to open, and we're going to miss the big moment, but he took it pretty seriously at the time, and that was a lot of fun. But other than that, I guess I'm kind of a control freak too, because I sort of project manage him a little bit. Mm-hmm. I'm like, so honey, what are you working on today? And I was like, well, Uber. I was like, no. Specifically, what product, what part of it are you working on? Or, how's the dashboard coming on AnyFu? And, how long do you think I do kind of project manage him? So, I'm pretty up to date on what he's working on specifically. Do you guys listen to the podcasts that they do?
I'm usually somewhere around, kind of flitting around the house or doing work at the table at the same time. Justin and I have shared like office space, or kind of, carved out an office area in our living room usually, because there's a lot of times when my schedule is flexible. So I'm just kind of home and doing work from there. So I do listen. I listen quite a lot, usually while it's happening. What about you, Sandy?
Oh, I don't listen to the podcast. I do, though, read the description and the comments. I always do, just to kind of see what the reaction is, and if people are kind of picking up on a specific topic or what they like about it. And I'm really very pleased that most of the comments seem to be so positive.
Yeah, I'm not as in tune with the comments, but I do know that the show is quite popular with the listenership, and that's, I think, like a great thing. I'm really excited about that. I mean, it's cool to know that something that started with just Justin and Jason having a couple of conversations with each other has turned into something that feels like a community. There's almost a family feel where the listeners really feel like they know Jason and Justin, which I think is something that's probably hard to achieve when you're doing you're recording something in a room somewhere. It's amazing to me that they can reach out to people that way and that it's meaningful and that, stuff they know is valuable to people.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, how do you feel about them talking about our personal details, like our finances and our kids?
I've never asked Justin to edit something out that he said about me. Usually he'll kind of we'll know that something has happened during the week and Justin's like, oh yeah, logging that away to talk about it on the podcast. So I kind of know ahead of time when he's going to talk about something, or he can see the reaction on my face when I'm sitting there and he's saying it. So he kind of sometimes it's almost like he's telling me the story too. And then Georgie did this and that, or her parents said this and that. And I'll just he can tell by my look. I guess some of our communication is nonverbal, that kind of stuff. But for the most part, I just think whatever happens is fair game because we're together so much. We may not be talking and connected so much, but we're always around each other. So the stuff is bound to happen. What about you, Sandy? Do you like it, not like it if Jason brings up stuff that's happening at home?
I guess I don't really care. There's a little bit, a part of me is I don't really want him talking about the kids so much. But other than that, I guess I don't really care. We don't really have too much to hide. What about you, Sherry? Does Rob ever get into the personal stuff on his podcast?
I don't think he does quite as much as you guys do on texting. But he will talk about stories from the kids or, explaining why we're moving from one place to another that usually, has to do with me. And yeah, Sherry did this now. And, generally I just really, I just really trust him. There's never been anything where I felt upset or uncomfortable with something that he's shared. So I think we kind of we just sort of trust each other on that level. It's interesting you said that about Jason talking about the kids, though, because one of the things that he has talked a lot about, or at least a bit, is Colby and sort of his gifts and abilities. And that has been so significant for me.
Really?
Yeah, totally. Well, as a parent of a kid who is like our husbands and like Colby, who's this, really bright, really sort of unique mind and sort of the great things, but also the real challenges of raising a kid like that. So it's, even though it might be uncomfortable for Jason to talk about that, it's actually been really helpful for me because I'm I'm not alone raising this child who is a tech in training, but he's 6. So
it's amazing. I think sometimes it's hard to keep up with Jason. And tell me what you guys think about this, because he's got so many ideas and he's like, I want to do this, or I've got this kind of an idea for, a web app, and Colby's the same way. He's like, Mom, I want to build a treehouse on the roof, or I want to make a slide that goes from the second floor to the first floor. And, I can't keep up because I'm very much like, okay, no, we need to finish something that we start here, boys, and I find it very frustrating. And it's almost, sends my mind spinning that Jason especially, he just talks about all this stuff. I'm like, honey, why don't you just focus on releasing AnyFu already? That is my first goal here.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting that you say that, Sandy, because I think, you may feel that Jason kind of spins out a lot of the time on these, grand schemes and ideas. I feel like sometimes Justin isn't quite certain how he wants to approach something, and he's kind of mentally kind of doing gymnastics around, should I do this? Should I do this contract? How should I go about this issue? And I think it's incredibly grounding for him to be able to call Jason a lot of the times. Like, just, hey man, you got 5 minutes? Okay. So this and this happened and this, and you can hear Justin getting kind of wound up by it. Like, he doesn't quite know. He kind of has a sense of what is happening and what he wants to do. And Jason will be like, okay, man, this is what you need to do. And it's almost like Jason, I don't know if he's like this at home, but he knows exactly how to put Justin at ease. He knows exactly what to say. It's like he's the most confident man in the world. Like,
he thinks he is.
Yeah, no, but those are the times when I really appreciate Justin having Jason around, because you can tell that there's something just so solid about that. And I think it's incredibly grounding. I just wondered, like, he must be more like that at home too.
He doesn't give me advice because he knows I won't take it.
Of course.
Yeah, but he gives a lot of people advice, and he actually hooks a lot of people up with jobs.
That's where AnyFu came from, though, isn't it? Like, AnyFu came out of Jason wanting to build business connections for other people.
Probably. He's great. He's great at that. He's great at getting to know people, and once you know Jason, you're his best friend, and you're always his best friend. I mean, he has connections with people he's known most of his life, and then he think, oh well, so and so is great at this. I should get them involved with this other person, and he's a networker. I told him that he should either start a consultant's business or charge a finder's fee, a people's finder's fee.
It sounds like Sandy, you've kind of been at the root of a lot of the startup experiences Jason has had.
Do you think so? I mean, the only thing that I can think of is that when we first moved to California and Jason tried to reconnect with his old soccer team, and they just sucked. I mean, they just couldn't get it together. The players wouldn't show up on time and the fields were terrible. And so then he went and he tried out for this other team, and he flubbed the tryout. I mean, he was out of shape, and it had been a long time since he had actually he did a bad job. And
okay, Sandy, just tell it to me straight. How did he really do?
I'm not exaggerating. And I
don't hold back.
Right. He wouldn't tell it any differently, I think. But then, so I just said, well, why don't you start your own team? And I don't know if he's ever talked about his soccer team, Cobalt, on the Texting podcast, but yeah, we had that team for about 10 years, and it was pretty successful. So that's the only thing I remember specifically opening my mouth and saying, why don't you start your own team? But, other than that, I guess I've just sort of been peripherally involved, but not really at the heart of it, I would say.
I'm curious for you ladies, how were those first conversations of, like your husband's deciding not to get a full-time job, so to speak, and to chart this different path? How did that go? How did you guys feel about that at the time?
I have a story. I was in the hospital bed after just giving birth to Colby, and Jason, who of course, as soon as he has an idea in his head, it's out of his mouth. So he says to me, I'm kind of thinking about scrapping the whole trading software and going ahead and building like a online whiteboard, kind of a PowerPoint, web-based PowerPoint system. And I couldn't believe it. I about died because I was no longer working. I quit my job about a month before we had Colby, and he was in a good, steady situation with backing, and I was like, and I just given birth, and I couldn't believe that. I just couldn't believe it. I was shocked, and I said, well, how is your your backer going to feel about you changing directions literally 180 degrees. It couldn't be more different. It all worked out in the end, but that's how Prezo got started. And I about flipped out at the time. Now I'm totally immune to it. He can do whatever he wants, but...
And was it like because that was the first time and because you were so uncertain about whether it would work and whether you'd have enough money?
Yeah, and hormonally unstable for sure.
Well, I think he waited until you were in the hospital because he knew you couldn't get up and kind of smack him.
Oh,
I'm sure
you're right.
I'm sure caught you when you were vulnerable.
But like Sherry, you asked the question. So, I mean, how is it for you? And has Rob always been an entrepreneur since you've known him, or was that a transition that he made at some point?
I mean, Rob was an entrepreneur when he was in like third grade, selling candy at summer camp and making a profit. So it's just always been who he was. Although when we first got married and when we met, he was really on a very different path. He was doing this management training program in this big electrical contracting company in the Bay Area. And he was sort of had this very corporate path laid out for him, which I was not a fan of. So I was really excited and encouraged when he decided to sort of go into more tech and coding and, took a job at a very small firm. But interestingly, it was really after our son was born that he decided he never went back to a full-time job after that. He took paternity leave and never went back full time. And I think it was sort of that moment of really reevaluating, wait, what do I want my life to be? And how do we make that happen? And how do I have time to do the things I want to do? So I think for us, like, we sat down, we made a budget, and we kind of said, this is what you need to make every month for this to work for us. Mm-hmm. And he's always made that number. And I've never really asked any other questions.
Oh, gosh.
So, it's been like really exciting, but there's certainly been moments when I've kind of thought, okay, like, are you going to be able to make your number this month? Or, how's it going to work? But in general, it has. So I'm now judging from a lot of data that it's been a good choice.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that the uncertainty has been a little bit of an issue for me. Justin has talked about this on Texting already, is sort of the background I come from is distinctly middle class. My mom is a dental hygienist. My dad has always sold fence, like commercially. And so they're 9 to 5 people. That's what we do. We go to a job. We work for a company. We're company people. We get a steady salary and we just kind of stick with what we're doing. You work for a place for like 10 years or more. You have a lot of loyalty to your company and things like that. So Justin has always had something on the side, whether he's worked for a company and then been, concocting something in the basement or the garage or wherever he's working. For a while, he wanted to start a dating service in London where people handed each other cards. Like, I think you're cute. Come to this website and find me there. It's like the person standing right in front of you. Why would they go to a website after getting a card? Why don't they just say, hi, you're cute. Do you want to go out? Give me your number. Like, why would they then
pub on the
go
corner.
home? Yeah. Why would I go home and then check you out on a website? It's just strange. So like, that's like one of Justin's really, really early businesses. And you can see how far he's come since then. I mean, he's put out some amazing things since then. But they all have to start somewhere. So, I mean, I never understood it. And I always said to Justin, like, how could you not want to work for a company where you're stable and you know how much money you're going to have every month? Like, there have been months where we've been doing really, really great. And then other months where it's like, okay, it's not as great as last month. We need to tighten the strings a little bit. But deep down, I think I have a big anxiety about having to go without. For a little while. We always make it through, but there's kind of being an entrepreneur is kind of like gambling in some ways. That's like my perspective on looking at it. It's like, I want to put in a little bit of work so that I make more at the end of it. I want to put in a lot of work now. Let me rephrase. I want to put in a lot of work now so that later on I only have to do a little bit of work and I get a huge return, rather than I do a little bit of work every day and I get the same amount of money every month. So that kind of feels to me a little bit like a calculated pulling down of the slot machine handle kind of thing. Only you created the slot machine, so you have better chances of winning, basically. Does it ever feel that way to you, ladies? I mean, Sherry, you touched on that a little bit. Maybe it's been like that for you a little bit more, Sandy?
It's definitely been a roller coaster for us. And I think that's true when you have an entrepreneur. I mean, I think Jason also was just born that way, that, working a regular 9-to-5 job for a company just would make him miserable. And, I can't really mess with his character like that. I mean, it's who he is. That's who I married. I knew what I was getting into. But I think with an entrepreneur, the highs are so high and the lows are so low. I remember a few years ago, it was the year that Christmas was on a Friday, and it was a real lull for a few months. And it was the Wednesday before Christmas, and we had $0 for Christmas presents for the kids. I mean, we had nothing for them. And, they're at an age where they're full on Santa Claus. I mean, they get it. They're into it. They talk about it all year long. And it was just horrible. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. We have literally $0 for this. And that was extraordinarily difficult. I remember he got, he just signed on to work for Uber at the time, and they were gracious enough to give him an advance. And as soon as that check was cashed, I mean, I went to Toys R Us, right before Christmas, and bought all the kids' toys. And I have to say, it took quite a while for me to recover from that level of stress. And it was really tough for me, I'm not so much concerned about it, but something like that to put onto the kids was very, very stressful. And I remember asking Jason when Uber offered him a full-time job, and Jason was kind of weighing it, although it would have meant that we would have to move up to San Francisco and that he would actually be working in an office 80 hours a week, and it would be a big lifestyle change. And I told him, because I was just so scarred from that experience, I said, please work it out. And I think that was one of the few times where I've actually asked him to go get us something steady. And he ended up turning him down, which was also devastating, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be more of this up and down, and I just don't know how much more I can take. And but it ended up working out to be all the best. I mean, he couldn't be in a better situation now. So I guess in the long run, I'm very happy that he turned it down, but it was very difficult at the time.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that. I mean, that sounds like, not knowing whether you're going to have presents for the kids at Christmas, that sounds like a horrible amount of stress to be going through, because you feel responsible. You feel really responsible for that. I don't have to worry about kids right now, but I do wonder when Justin and I do have kids, I will probably be just, doing a little private practice, not working a huge amount. And I wanted to ask you ladies, like, you're working to a various degree. I mean, whether it's at home or outside of home, you're working to a various degree. Did you ever feel a pressure to work more because of that uncertainty about money coming through, or get a job somewhere? Or, did you ever feel like now you need to take on more financial responsibility? Not that you doubt your husband, but just because you'd really like to have more certainty in life.
Sherry, I think you'd be better to answer this question than me.
I'm thinking about it. I think it feels really good for me to sort of be able to contribute consistently to the income. And, I'm trying to think about whether I'm working because I need to or because I want to, which is a really big question. So in general, I have been able to make the choices I want to make vocationally because they're choices I wanted to make. And I, want to work. I'd work like 3 days a week, which is a really nice arrangement for me. It has been nice for my sanity to know that there is a consistent paycheck coming. It wouldn't cover everything, but and I think it does give me, though, a level of security that both just for me as an adult and as a person just makes me feel like, okay, I am doing something solid to make sure that our family is supported. But I don't know if I would feel like that if Rob was a lawyer or an accountant or something else either. I'm trying to think if it must be a level of the sort of instability of being an entrepreneur that contributes some of that. But yeah, it's despite him always having made the number, I think there is somewhere back in the recesses of my mind a fear that one day something will change or something will happen, and then when you've built a business around you and your abilities, it's not easy to sell it. It's not something that is an asset that you can make liquid quickly. And so anyway, I think for me, having just that consistent income does help. Does feel good to me.
Yeah. I was also thinking about Sandy, you said something about it being sort of the entrepreneurial lifestyle is a little bit like, I don't know, sometimes it feels like Justin's on crack or something. He's got a new idea and he's addicted to it. I mean, he will sit down at the computer and not get up for 3 days straight. And I'll be like, are you going to shower? Are you going to shave? Like, are you going to get up and stretch your legs? Anything? And he just becomes obsessive about it. And he's saying to me the whole time, this is $1 billion idea, G. This is $1 billion idea. This is going to take us, like, you'll be able to get the house you want. You'll be able to buy any car you want. And it becomes like, all of a sudden we could potentially win the lottery. And it becomes like so, I don't know, like it's like dangling a carrot, but the carrot is in front of him too. And I just get caught up in it. And like, I almost go, yes, like
it's exciting. I've loved kind of going through the AnyFu development process.
Yeah.
When the graphic design, the little Kung Fu master guy.
Yeah.
I was totally into that. And I was really excited to see it all. And I love being a part of it. I couldn't imagine any other way now because I'm kind of addicted to the highs of the new idea also, and I think over the years that my risk tolerance has lowered considerably, because I've been through it a number of times. And I think we're very fortunate that our husbands have a skill, you know what I mean? A marketable skill. So as bad as it could get, there's always that to fall back on. But, I get really excited. I'm like, okay, but I always want to ask him, so what, I want him to think it through the entire way. So I'll start asking him questions. I say, okay, so what's your market for this? And how do you think you're going to get customers? And, so I totally get into it too.
Yeah. What about you, Sherry? Does it ever feel that way with what Rob's working on?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. but it's kind of random too. Like there was one time for several months where he owned this website that sells it teaches people how to grow bonsai trees. At the same time,
That's so
he
random.
owned a website that sold beach towels.
And
then the kicker was that then he owned a website that sold plans for people to construct their own boat for duck hunting. So it was like, I know, so random.
Talk about a niche market.
So he had all of these three things at the same time, in addition to, .NET Invoice and these other things that he has owned for longer periods of time. But I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, what is this stuff?
I could imagine it'd be harder to keep track of what Rob's doing, maybe, than what Justin and Jason are doing.
I never know what Rob. It's fun.
So it can get exciting, right? I mean, I kind of get caught up in that excitement, and I think I feel sometimes a little bit like Sandy. Like, I mean, Sandy, you've been directly involved in the business side of what Jason's done, but I don't know all that stuff. And I'm just like, when is the money going to come in?
Yeah.
Not that I'm money hungry. It's just like, okay, but can you tell me when we're going to be making X amount of dollars? Because I'm a planner and I like to be able to plan ahead for what the budget's going to look like and things like that. I want stability, some sort of stability, even if it means we're going to go up to this amount one month and be down this amount. I'd like to know ahead of time, which you're never going to know, which is driving me crazy. It drives me crazy to never know exactly what the paycheck is going to be every month, only because it directly affects me.
Totally. I'm with you 100%. It's very difficult to budget and try to plan out your cash flow, because even if you send somebody an invoice, for example, on the first of every month, you never know when they're going to pay you, right?
Yeah.
And, at times when it's tight and you really are living month to month, you're like, okay, so, I'm going to need this much money in our bank account by such and such. And it's like, how often can you ask them to talk to their clients about, how about you pay me now? Or when are you going to pay that invoice? It's just extraordinarily uncomfortable. But from a cash flow, geez, it's tough. We've had to, I've really had to sort of pick and choose what bills I'm going to pay at certain times of the month from time to time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I kind of feel like that landlord that's going from apartment to apartment, like, okay, your rent's due, when are you going to pay? Okay, in 5 days. Okay, in 10 days. And I feel like, just like you said, Sandy, I'm putting that pressure on Justin. Like, he's almost going to somebody and saying, my wife really needs the money.
Yeah. No kidding.
My wife's going to kill me if you don't pay me.
And it does affects our marriage. Like, I feel like I'm just like the money collectors.
I know. I
don't want that role, but I also don't want to micromanage Justin and what he's doing either. So
it is a hard balance.
Awkward. Yeah.
Between trying to manage the house and then not micromanaging our husbands.
Right. Because you're the one that knows what the outgoings are, and he's the one trying to bring the money in. So I can see how that dance would be really interesting, trying to make sure those numbers match up.
Yes.
Yeah.
One thing that we did kind of early on, which I think was really helpful for my sanity, was we really separated the business from our personal finances.
Oh.
Even if it's something, as small as making $13 on a book sale or whatever, it all goes in the business account. And then he pays from the business account into our personal account a certain amount of money. So to be honest, I have no idea what happens in the business in terms of cash flow, which is probably good, because I would either go shopping or I would be ragging on him.
Yeah.
So I'm sure sometimes there's a huge chunk of money in there if he's sold a site or something, and then other times there's not very much, and that's frankly that's his problem as long as he makes his number for our family. Which it sounds a little, I'm a little bit more detached, I think, than you guys are in the way that you've set it up, but it's been nice for me to be sort of buffered from those ups and downs a bit.
Yeah. I think one of the nice things about texting is Justin's expanded his network of people. Like, he said to me the other day, I really got to talk to Rob. I want to talk to Rob about how he does things, because I want to do more of what Rob does. And I think he really admires Rob. And I think what he sees Rob doing really, he's kind of into that. He's really interested. So, just the fact that Justin was able to move from a completely different country and meet all of these really interesting men and women who are out there, building things and selling things. I don't think we had that kind of network in London so much. The culture is so different around this kind of stuff. Even though there are people doing it, there's still that American dream that's very much, surrounding all these web apps and things that it kind of amazes me. And I know at the end of the day that, as somebody said, like, what Justin does can get him a job, no matter what. Somebody's going to want to hire a programmer. So we're going to be okay. It's just a matter of whether or not Justin wants to do that particular thing at that particular time. But I've also found the times when we're really, really stressed and we don't know how we're going to make it often opens doors and windows to things Justin really wants to do. You just have to go through that stress for a little while to find other doors opening. And thankfully, like Jason's been really helpful with Justin in that regard, making those connections out there too. So that's been good. I think
the community of it has been really great for Rob too. Like the beginning year was really hard. I think it was really lonely, and there were lots of things just trying to figure out, how do you set this up? How do you do these things? But now that he's started a network and really feels like he has a lot of relationships with people where he can call up someone and ask these kinds of questions, it's been actually really good for our relationship too, because I'm not the only sounding board. And, I like to be a sounding board, but I don't know. Go ask Jason. Go ask Justin. I don't know.
And do you know how many times I've said that to Justin? I'm like, this is a Jason question. Over my head.
Well, and Jason will ask me things for, what's it, a couple of weeks ago. This topic comes up with us every so often. He hates the name texting.
Oh.
And, hates it. Like, it makes him cringe. And so I said to him the other day, well, honey, I think you've kind of built a brand. If you change the name, you would still kind of have to say, the podcast formerly known as Texting kind of a thing, change it to some weird symbol and then change it back. Still, it's a brand, and I'm sorry, honey, you're stuck with it. And he kind of got mad at me for that. And, so I was like, well, go talk to somebody else. Clearly, I'm not telling you what you want to hear.
So that's why the other day, out of the blue, Justin comes up to me and says, what do you think about the name Texting?
Oh, my gosh.
They must have been talking about it. Sometimes I don't know where these things come from. But I do know. But what I do know is that there are times when Jason and Justin disagree on something. And Sandy, you are the saving grace. Like, a lot of times you'll kind of help Jason understand Justin's perspective. And then, thank God for you, they kind of come around and they start to see eye to eye again. So whatever you're saying to Jason, I appreciate it. I just want to thank you publicly on the podcast.
And likewise, I know that Jason, because I've worked with him, I know he is not an easy person to work with because he's just so set in his ways. And we're going back and forth about the microphone situation for this recording of us three girls. And because I know, Georgie, you guys don't have internet in your new place yet.
Not yet.
And Justin keeps saying, well, why can't we all just be in the same room and like we're talking over coffee? And that's not going to work, And I said to him, well, I don't see why that's not going to work. I mean, if we're on different headsets, certainly that you'll pick up the other person's voice and there'll be a weird echo, like when you're talking, an international phone call.
Yeah.
But I said, so I don't understand if we're just sitting in front of a microphone, why wouldn't that work? And so he's like, all right, I'll go.
That sounded just like you.
I know. I'll go send Justin an email and tell him if he wants to get a multi-directional mic, I'm like, whatever. I just...
Tech drama.
Yes.
Tech snobbery.
Oh my gosh.
But the thing that's funny about this is, like, Jason and Justin will get into it about something. They'll disagree. Yeah. But I am so much like Jason. Like, I'm such a type A personality. I can be so controlling. Like, I fully admit that there are times when I stubbornly want it my own way. I can't explain why. I just want it a certain way. And so I empathize so much with Jason on some of these things that I'm telling Justin, but you know how you can be, Jay. You know how you can be. You have to understand how he's experiencing you. And he's like, yeah, okay. And sometimes he sees it Jason's way and other times he doesn't. And they just kind of go off and get broody and somehow like get over it like guys do.
I love how you're doing like couples therapy for Justin and Jason.
and it's true, because Jason will come and talk to me about they had this, they don't see eye to eye on a particular coding technique or whatever. And, so he'll tell me and rah, 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 and I just, Jason, just, I don't understand why you have to always take the long road. Why can't you just, he always talks about the MVP, the minimum viable product.
Yeah.
But I don't see any time when he's ever put out a minimum viable product.
See, we tell it to them straight because we know them so well,
I know.
That's why they married us.
Right, exactly. I feel like it's my marital duty to bring him back down to earth sometimes.
Yeah. But it's funny. I mean, I don't know if the Texting listeners know how often Justin and Jason actually bicker about things, but it happens sometimes. I mean, it does definitely, and it goes on for a few days. Like, right. They'll get to a certain point where they just can't talk about it anymore because they're just not going to agree about it. And then they go off and Justin's like, oh my gosh, like I made him so mad. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. How am I going to talk to him again? And I'm like, don't worry. Sandy's talking to him about it. It's fine. And then Justin will bounce things off of me and I'll say, well, you have to understand Jason's perspective, And so it makes me
thing.
Yeah, it makes me think about an agency I used to work for. We would put in so many hours there. We're working with kids and families, a lot of crisis, long hours. We'd often see the people we work with in teams a lot more than we'd see our own families at home. Like we'd be working, 80, 90 hours a week. So we developed this term for like your best friend at work who you talk to all the time and you kind of pal around with and you share like all your intimate, details of what's going on with work and stuff like that. We call that your work wife. So I think Justin has a work wife. I almost hesitated.
Named Jason.
Yes. So I always say things like, hey, how's the work wife doing? I don't think Jason
really
knows
funny.
I call him.
Yeah, they do disagree. And there has been times when it has taken a while to actually come to an agreement. And I always try to be very objective, even though sometimes I think Jason wants me to be 100% on his side, but I mean, he's very rational. As heated as he gets about the things that he cares about, he is ultimately very rational. And so, if I can okay, so what's really at the heart of this issue? And, what is Justin really concerned about? And, if I can talk to him, and I can't even talk to him about it in one sitting because it's just not pleasant. But, and sometimes it takes me a while to kind of get through to him and, honey, maybe you should, loosen the reins a little bit here. And, but they always work it out.
Yeah, I think it's mainly that they just have different styles of working. And I think they have different preferences about how to go about a project. Which both of them think that their way is the right way sometimes. So really, AnyFu has been an interesting endeavor to see how they're going to make it work. Like when they first said, let's do AnyFu, I thought, wow, that's great. That could be a lot of balance or that could be a lot of conflict. I don't really know how it's going to go. So, I mean, I think for the most part, they moved along steadily. It's just that other things have come up and kind of delayed like how fast it's getting done. But Sandy, it sounds like you're a little bit frustrated. You'd like to see AnyFu like out there already?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally, I would, and Jason's always like, well, we just need to do this one more thing and it, it has to be perfect. And, I get it that you don't want to put out a product that has all kinds of bugs but does it really need all the bells and whistles? We had this discussion when he was working on Prezo, that web-based PowerPoint. We had it over and over and over again because he wanted to make it exactly like PowerPoint. And every single feature that PowerPoint had, he had to have too. And his first idea when he started this was like a shared whiteboard, so that you could be talking with somebody and you could both, put, either write on the whiteboard or put up a picture on the whiteboard or something like that, so you could have a productive kind of a conversation. And so that's how it started. And it just really kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And Yeah, so I'm always just kind of pushing him to keep it simple. Tell me what the few features that you really, really need to have, although what Jason's opinion of what features you really, really need to have are, I think, different than mine. in my professional opinion, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would like to see it released because I think it could be great. And let's just get it going,
Yeah, and I didn't mean to make it sound like any food's not already out there, because it's already out there, and they've got some people who are connecting on it and working, consulting already. You just like to see it kind of pushed out, more fully. But Sherry, I was curious if Rob has a work wife, like a go-to person that he looks up when he's having a hard time with something or needs advice, or is he the work wife of a lot of other people?
I think he is polygamous in his work wives. It's a little scandalous. Well, he does the podcast with a man named Mike Tabor, and they've been working together for a long time. So he has that work wife, so to speak, and then he also has a great friendship with Ruben Gomez, who I think Rob sort of started mentoring Ruben, and now Ruben is mentoring Rob right back. So yeah, there's a broad network of people, some of whom I've met and some of whom I haven't. And sometimes it feels kind of funny to have these people have pretty significant input into his life when, like, I don't even know them and I've never met them. But so far, it's been really, really helpful, like I was saying earlier, for him to have a community and to have people to ask questions to and just fight with, and like have these more in-depth discussions, because they're not always discussions I can have with him. Yeah.
But do you also feel like Rob kind of comes to you as a sounding board, and like, after dinner and there's time, he's kind of debriefing on how things are going with a particular project and stuff like that? Does that happen?
Yeah, definitely. Rob is absolutely an extrovert. And so for him to work at home all day, mostly by himself, he'll go to lunch with people a couple of times a week, but for the most part, he's, in a room by himself. So when I get home, it's like he's so much to say, so much he's been holding on to and thinking about. So we do a lot of talking, and I have been, involved in all of the big decisions about whether to buy or sell something, or, managing those really big choices. But in general, it's probably his polygamous that gives him a lot of the day-to-day feedback.
Yeah, I think it's good that they have these networks, because I wouldn't want all the pressure on me to constantly weigh in on all of these big decisions, because it does feel sometimes like they're monumental. Like it does, a simple yes or no can sometimes change the direction of what Justin's doing for the next 6 months to a year or even longer. So, I'd like other people who know more about the tech sphere than me to be able to give him that input. But I think Justin definitely defers and consults with me at the end of the day to, this is going to affect us. So I'm glad that all three of our guys definitely do that. They include us, they make sure that we're informed. Or in some cases, in Sandy and Jason's marriage, Sandy is like the manager of what's happening. Like, come on, Jason, let's do this.
Yeah.
So it's good to see us like involved in that way. I wasn't sure how involved you guys got in those things, or if you preferred to just, kind of stay out of it and let them get on with it. So it sounds like overall they really take our opinion seriously, which is nice to hear.
Yeah, I think so. It is really nice to have the whole network of the podcast. It does feel like a family. I know that when Jason and Justin went up to MicroConf, he just loved it, because had such a great time going out to dinner with the texting listeners. I can't remember where they went, Pink Taco or something like that. And I remember, I think it was maybe the first time that they went to MicroConf, and they were all sitting around, having drinks and dinner. And this is when they really hashed out the AnyFu concept.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then it was then that it really kind of focused them and clarified their vision for it. And that's really that, started the whole building process of it. But I love having the network. It's great that our old friends listen to it. And it's Jason and Justin, I think, have had the opportunity to meet some fascinating people who are doing just amazing things in the world. And it's really inspiring.
Yeah, I think it makes me feel like we live in a bigger world in some ways because, the internet is known for bringing people together, that live, across continents from each other and things like that. But just to feel like you're, very, very close to a group of people who are all, I don't know,
innovating.
They're all creative.
Yeah.
I think that's why I think Justin's done better than he ever has since he got to America, because it's brought him that much closer to just talking to people. He's more public than he used to be. And I like that. I mean, yeah, that's very different that's a different experience than what we had before. So.
I think it is really important to get out, especially guys like ours. And Jason does the same thing as Rob. He's got his office at home. He works by himself. And he does go out to lunch with people a couple times a week, exactly the same. But it's really important to kind of get out in the world, get out of your nerd hole. And, I hope I'm not offending anybody with that, but that's what we call the office, is the nerd hole.
I'm right there with you.
And it's just so wonderful that they have developed this network of people that they can socialize with and bounce ideas off of and be inspired by, and likewise be able to do the same thing for other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Justin is kind of signaling to me that we've got, okay. At first he said 5 more minutes. Now he's saying keep going as long as we want. Okay. Thanks. I've got my other producer here who's giving me notes. Okay. So when we finish, I just have to say that's a wrap.
Right. That's how Jason ends the show.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll let Sandy do that.
Okay.
But I just wanted to ask, I don't know, you just mentioned the nerd hole. So it made me think of the general geekiness of the guys we're married to. Would you describe your husbands as geeks? And if so, what's the geekiest thing that they do? Or the geekiest moments? Because I think Justin is a huge geek. I'm a bit of a nerd. I'm just kind of book smart and stuff, but there's things that he does where I'm just wow, that was a total geek moment. And I was just curious whether you ever had geek moments in your home.
One of the geek things that's causing me to roll my eyes a lot lately is the total proliferation of geek t-shirts.
Oh my gosh.
T-shirts with sayings written in binary. T-shirts with words comprised totally of formulas.
Like the T-shirt that has the Milky Way galaxy on it, and with the "You Are Here" arrow towards,
Yeah, or he had a shirt, and I seriously made him change before we went out the other day. He's wearing a shirt that has an image from Old Oregon Trail that says, "You have died of dysentery." I was like, "You are not wearing that to dinner."
Oh my god.
I love the man, but I'm regulated on the wardrobe. We cannot have so many geek shirt references. First, there's just too many.
Yes, I definitely can relate to being married to a geek and feeling like a personal stylist at times. Just having to weigh in and kind of go, no, just shake your head.
Exactly. Jason sort of has the uniform, we call it. It's a pair of cargo shorts and usually a Cobalt t-shirt, his old soccer team t-shirt. And I go out and buy him clothes because he's also been banned from any sort of shopping establishment. And actually, that's better for both of us. And I will literally go back and exchange things a number of times, then take him to the store with me. I can't shop with him. And so I'll just come home with clothes that I think he would look nice in. And, sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. And it was just the other day when I brought home a shirt that was, a step above the Cobalt t-shirt. And he was sort of undecided about it. And I said, all right, honey, you have until, and this was last week, I said, you have until Monday afternoon to make a decision. And if you don't, I will. So, needless to say, it's now hanging up in his closet.
Yeah, Justin just goes with the general uniform of a black t-shirt and jeans. That's it. He'll just buy like 20 black t-shirts at a time. And I just want to know why these guys, they don't want to think about what they're wearing. Like it's nice to wear colors. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it is nice to wear colors. I agree with that.
So.
This is too funny. I thought I was the only woman in the world that was trying to add some flair to my husband's wardrobe.
Oh, I don't think so.
Well, I'm kind of trying to take some flair back. Like there's just a little too much flair for me.
Yeah, alternative flair.
Geek flair.
What about like the media they consume? So yeah, they are on a lot of like the hacker news sites and sites that are talking about what's happening in tech and the other podcasts out there and that sort of thing. But what about like what they watch on TV or the movies they're into? Like Justin tends to like the Sci-Fi Channel and stuff that has the word star in the title. Just anything with star in the title, basically, like Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, anything with star. So, and I don't watch those shows. I'm not into that kind of stuff, even though I respect people who do. But like he would much rather go and see like the new Alien film, Prometheus, over anything else that's terrible that's going on. And I want to see a rom-com. So we have so many disagreements about this stuff. Does that ever happen to you guys?
Yeah. Prometheus was 2 hours of my life. I'm never getting back.
Oh, yeah.
Jason, we watch the Science Channel quite a bit. They have some interesting shows, like the universe, or because Colby's kind of interested in that kind of thing too. So sometimes they watch that stuff together, and he watches that. But we also, he's going to kill me for saying this, but we also just finished watching The Bachelorette. And I watched it, but since I'm watching it when he's there, and he's usually reading, one of his many articles that he's printed out in the evening, and he'll be like, wait a minute, what did she say? Or who's that guy and where are they going on their date? Yeah. What's his deal? And so he actually, when the final was on, he's like, wait for me. I want to see what. I was like, really? Okay. There are shows he refuses to watch, like Glee, that I love.
Oh, and, yeah.
And I just don't understand why, because I will watch his shows like X-Files and Fringe and Lost and stuff like. We'll make that part of our primetime lineup, but he won't watch any of the shows that I really like that are, girly.
But you got him to watch The Bachelorette. That's amazing, actually.
I did. Well, I mean, that's good TV. Come on.
Yes.
No one would question that. I did get Rob into Project Runway. That's his girly addiction.
That's too funny.
Thank God for Bravo Network.
Totally.
Gives us moments with our husbands, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many geek things that Justin does that I can't even think of them all right now, but there definitely are a lot of these moments where I'm like, you just missed me completely. Like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
He went full geek on you.
Yeah, stuff like that. Like, he'll be so excited about something. Oh, gee, I just heard a report where they cloned like 2 rats and and he's going on and on about it. And it's just the level of excitement that he has about this stuff.
And the breadth, I think, of subjects that that he gets excited about. I mean, he'll read articles on, some sort of government thing, UFO thing, biology thing, and tech thing, and I mean, all kinds of stuff. So, and he's really interested in, different alternative methods for education these days. And so, I mean, he just goes on and on about, and he will research this stuff voraciously. He will really dig deep into it. And, I just kind of get the headline version of it, but he just goes on, and it's hard to keep up with.
Yeah, I think sometimes, I mean, I don't know. I don't know exactly what, I kind of wonder what draws us to these geeks. Like, what is it about us that caused us to find these particular men? Like, maybe that's a deeper question. We don't have time to talk about it all today, but I think of myself as like somebody who's very much a people person. I like talking to people. I like being out there. I like to know what's going on in relationships and stuff. Justin's good at that, but he really could care less about it a lot of the time. I mean, we have friends that we haven't spoken to in a couple of years, because it's just like, yeah, we'll catch up with them later. There's a lot more going on that I need to get done now and stuff like that. So I think his priorities are much more like about gadgets and things. He really likes solving problems, like putting together those types of connections, like technical connections, mathematical connections, things like that, rather than, what's going on the Bachelorette, which seems like riveting to me because it's about human nature and personalities and psychology and all of that stuff, what's going on between people. So I wonder if, like, I wanted somebody who was much less about that, and he wanted somebody that was much more about that or something.
I think one of the great things about being married to a geek is that, let me think about how to say this right, but like all of that kind of energy and passion and interest that goes into these ideas and the enthusiasm around that, like Rob generally has for me and for our family. Like there's this level of like obsessiveness and faithfulness. I mean, there's just a lot of like really great qualities that I think like the stick-to-itiveness and the creativity and like the obsessiveness that goes into making these guys like good at the work that they do, like has some really advantages for relationships when it's targeted the right way. Because I don't know. I've just been it's really fun to be married to Rob. Like he's a pretty good husband, but it's just, he's not distracted. he's only got in his life for one girl, and that's me. And he's fanatic about our kids, and it's definitely like a quirky obsessiveness that works well for me. Like I can handle that. It's good. So there's some redeeming qualities.
Yeah, I think that geeks definitely have strengths. I think that there's a lot of strengths that go along with being a geek. I mean, I think a lot of the energy that Justin doesn't expend socially, he can expend directly, like you said, directly into what he's building. So it's sort of like he's picking and choosing how he chooses to spend his energy. And he doesn't have to deal with like systemic, company-wide, things that you have to do just because you work in a company, which is like, make sure you submit that form or you get that approval from somebody. There's none of that like intermediary
You don't
process.
Make him write up his TPS reports?
No. I have enough paperwork in my job. I don't need to bring that home. But yeah, I think you bring up a really good point, which is they're their own boss. And I think that's important to men in particular. I mean, I know it's important to a lot of women, but I think with Justin in particular, he really wants to be his own boss because he wants to have that kind of responsibility and that kind of feeling like I created something and now people are out there using it and it's helping people and people feel good about it and they like what I've done. So he doesn't have to share that necessarily with anybody, but when he's working on a team, he loves sharing it. It's just at the end of the day, it was his idea. So, it's like he birthed something that he's really excited about,
It's really great to see someone just love what they're doing and love the ingenuity and the freedom to keep trying and to figure out how to, I don't know, like make their own thing. I think it's really cool to be around that, even if you're not directly doing it yourself.
I guess that kind of puts in perspective the focus that they have, going back to that issue about them being so focused, they kind of forget about other stuff going on around them. I once remember Justin working with somebody, I can't remember who it was, but this guy, I mean, it was someone who was obviously like a coder, programmer, and he said something along the lines of, why does my wife ask me to empty the dishwasher right now? Like, I'm at home, I'm at home and I'm doing this and this and that, and I'm working, and then all of a sudden she needs something to be done right now. Like, why does it need to be done right now? Can't she see that this is what I'm doing? Or something like that. And I think sometimes it's helpful to be with a psychology wife or an empathic wife, because sometimes we are mind readers. Like, we can see that going on. And like, we know when to back off and we know when to like let go of some things. I think that sounds kind of clear to me from talking to you two. Like, maybe the mind reading element we're able to do helps us stay in tune with our husbands and gives them the space they need to just get on with things. Would you agree with that, or am I totally off base here?
What do you think, Sandy?
I would agree. I agree. I agree completely. I think you're right on with that. I think, I spend quite a lot of time trying to make it easy for Justin. Oh, no, geez Louise.
You do make it easier for Justin.
Cut.
We'll edit that out. Don't worry, Sandy.
Married to?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm going to start over with that one.
Okay.
I spend quite a lot of time trying to make things really easy for Jason so that he can get done the things that he feels like he needs to. I think that's a big reason why I'm happy to take on most of the household type, managerial type duties. I'll even do the research into booking his trips up to San Francisco, just because I know that he doesn't want to expend his brain power and time doing that kind of a thing. And I can do it easily. So I have no problem. And I'm happy to try to think about, okay, what does he need to be able to work more efficiently? And I'll just take care of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a real partnership, what the two of you have going on. Mm-hmm. It really sounds like, there is an element of mind reading there in terms of like, you're thinking ahead to what would be easiest for Jason so that he can just keep plugging along and transitions happen smoothly. Does he appreciate it?
Yes, he does.
That's good.
No, we do. We have a great division of labor, and we have a great working relationship, even though we did actually work together in the same room, and we still got married after that.
You survived.
We survived it, and we've survived him working at home for the last 15 years. And I think it is because of that. We do have a very clear division of labor, and I always try to be very conscious of what he's doing. And on the flip side, he's very supportive of what I want to do. I mean, I need to get out of the house and do some of my own thinking for a little bit. And I've put my effort into volunteering with the Junior League. And, I have meetings at night, and that means that he has to try to feed the kids and get them to bed. And, but he's very willing to do that, because I think it's so important that you just have to recognize what your husband or partner needs and try your best to give it to him. Because I don't think it's a good idea to try to change somebody who is ingrained in their personality so strongly as our husbands have. You can't change that. You'll just make them miserable.
Yeah.
I love the way that you're describing that kind of partnership, because I'm sort of hearing it in all three of the coupleships we're talking about. But there's a dance, there's a partnership, there's sort of this view of marriage that's like, my job as your spouse is to help you flourish. And when you really give that to someone, I think they give it back just inadvertently. That's just how it works. And it's a neat dance.
Do you think that process is heightened because our guys do work at home? And so they're there. I mean, they're not going anywhere else. We might go out to an office, or Sandy, you might head out to get your junior league stuff done, but they're there all the time. I think Justin would say, like, I like having Georgie around. You know, sometimes he doesn't like having me around because I'm on his case, but you know, I think he likes being at home because that's kind of his hub. And I wonder if that sense of partnership and anticipating what's needing to happen, what needs to be done, making their lives easier, not because we're trying to serve them or subservient to them, just because it helps things flow and then they can do similar things for us. Do you think that happens more because they're at home as opposed to going to a 9-to-5?
It probably does force it because we just have a small little place, and I mean we're together literally all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely think that makes a difference.
I think another part of it is sort of the risk of being an entrepreneur and the decision as a couple to say, we're going to do this.
We're in it together.
Yeah, this level of buy-in and commitment that you have to have in order to make it work, I think, in order to be okay with that kind of risk.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that creates a kind of, you know, you need closeness. You need to be together. You are together in that, but you also, like you guys have also both said, you find ways to be separate too, because for our own sanity and our own health, and I'm sure for our husbands as well, we need separateness, you know, to find that balance too. I think if I didn't find ways to be separate from Justin, I'd probably start going a little bit crazy just because I don't want to live through him. I want to be supportive of him, but I don't want to live through him. Right. I still want my own life separate from what he's working on or where the direction we're trying to go, you know, financially or what have you. So do you guys feel that way too?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to go along for the ride for sure. But I just need to have my own accomplishments and my own things to think about.
Do you have to go, Sandy?
I have to pick up Colby in a little bit. He's at a flight engineering camp thing.
Oh, okay. Of course. Okay, that's great. So why don't we kind of start wrapping things up? Were there any other questions, like burning questions that you ladies had, or anything else that you wanted to mention before we finish up?
I'd just like to kind of thank all the texting listeners. It's been a lot of fun hearing everybody's stories and everybody's feedback. And I know that Jason appreciates all the positive things that he hears back. And I think it's just such a wonderful thing to have the great and dedicated listeners that the texting audience is.
That was so nicely said, Sandy.
Thank you. I'm a junior leaguer. I'm great at thank yous.
That was very nice.
I would write everybody a handwritten note if I could, but I won't. But no, I'm really thankful for just the dedication of the listeners.
Yeah, I would echo that. And I also, I listen to texting myself, so I think I don't know if people realize how much work goes into preparing for texting behind the scenes. So I just kind of appreciate the stuff Jason and Justin both put into it. I think Jason may do a little bit more prep than Justin does sometimes. And he's laughing. He's laughing over there in the corner.
but Justin does so much more on the back end and the production side.
Yeah. So it's definitely like a team effort, and I really admire the fact that they are disciplined enough to sit down and do it every week. And I hope the listeners, are benefiting from that. I hope that they continue to like it and listen.
Mm-hmm. And you guys should be congratulated on your 200th episode.
Yes,
definitely.
Both
Jason and Justin and you two, because we know that you're the supporting cast. So well done, ladies.
Well, thank you, ladies, for coming on and talking today. It's really nice to hear some of your insights, and I definitely feel like I know Jason and Rob a little bit better than I already do. That was very cool. All right,
that was a lot of fun. We'll get back together for the 400th episode.
We'll do the 400th episode, yeah? All right. So
Take care.
Thank you. And
that's a wrap.
Yes.
Yay.
All right, ladies. Take care. Talk to you later.